Welcome back to Murder with the Missus. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy, and today we're going to tell you about the Lake Bodom murders.
Don't forget to smash that like button. Check out the description for the links of all of our podcast platforms, CashApp, and Buy Me a Coffee. Like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends. As always, people, tell your friends because you know what? They deserve to see us too.
They deserve it. That's a gift.
We're just a delight.
Sure.
To be around.
We are. Oh, Lord. Okay. If you haven't heard of this one and you live in America, that's okay. It's one of those old true crime cases that folklore has exploded from. It happened in 1960 in Finland. So there's been plenty of stories told around campfires about this case, I can imagine. And you can read 20 articles on the same case and get some type of variation on each one. It's just wild. Plus, this is going to be another episode of Amy Butcher's words that are not American. Because, wow, we've had to reset this recording already once because I already messed it up.
It's all good. I mean,
I'm trying.
if you get it wrong, they'll let you know.
Somebody's going to point that out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this happened, like I said, in Finland 65 years ago. So tracking down documents and things to verify this, like I am usually able to do in American cases, is not an option. But this did actually happen. So I wanted to talk about it. So I'm just going to tell you when there's different reports, like different parts have been reported differently. Cool? Cool. Terrence sending a tweet.
No, I'm not. I was actually going in through our comments on some of our deals where, you know, people point out stuff.
That I say things wrong.
Yeah.
My bad.
Great comment. I'd like to know whenever part 2 comes out. Thank you. I already answered that one.
Get out of here. All right. We're talking about 4 teenagers. And I will also preface this story by saying that I can't fix my mouth to say some of these words. We've already talked about this. So if I butcher pronunciation, it's not malicious intent. I'm just a redneck. Okay.
Yeah.
We have 15-year-old Mela Bjorklund, and she was just a couple of days away from turning 16. So this group of friends decided to go camping. She rode out to the lake on the back of her boyfriend's motorcycle. This was 18-year-old Nils Gustafsson. And this was kind of a double date group-like activity. So coming along were their friends, 15-year-old Anja Mikey, okay, and her boyfriend, 18-year-old Seppo Boisman. Okay.
So 15-year-old girls, 18-year-old boys.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's Mikey or Mickey.
It's spelled M-A-K-I, but everybody pronounces it Mikey.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I didn't see where the spelling was. Gotcha. Good.
Yeah. And this is the 60s. Yeah. So you got 2 15-year-old girls out with 2 18-year-old boys for a weekend camping trip.
Yep.
It was reported in some places that their parents didn't know that this would be a co-ed weekend. And some report that Mela's parents knew about Niels, but they didn't like him. So they didn't approve either way. They wouldn't have let her go. The parents did not know all of the people that were involved in this camping trip. I'll just throw that out there. Now, Seppo and Anja, you have to pronounce the J, also rode out there on Seppo's motorcycle. They were all 4 from Vanta, but would be camping at Lake Bodom, and reportedly Niels and Mela had only been dating for about 3 weeks at this point. Did I already say that wrong? Hang on. Mela. No, I was right. Score. So they had a campsite that was a little spot that kind of jetted out onto the lake. They had a dock nearby, so they would, kind of jump off the dock and hang out, fish. There was also a snack shack nearby. It's a little building that a lot of lakes have where you can buy things so you don't have to go back into town to get them. We've talked about them on several other cases. There's snacks and everyday items in case you forget things. Now, the people who ran the snack shack lived right next to it, so they were on site. Now, at the campsite on Saturday, June 4th of 1960, the group set things up. Now, this didn't take long because they had a single canvas tent that they tied off on some nearby trees. It's basically just like almost like a tarp. So it's just like one solid piece of canvas. And reportedly, the guys had brought vodka and condoms. So light packers. And this is one of the variations because some reports say that they had beer and some say they had vodka. Either way, they were drinking. Fast forward to about 6 a.m. the next morning, and you would think that it would be dark out, right? But it wasn't, because Finland has what's called a white night. So the sun doesn't fully set during a white night. It goes down quite a bit, but it still stays kind of making it look like it's dusk or dawn during the night.
So like in Alaska.
So like in Alaska, yes. It's never dark during that time.
I guess is it all? No, it's parts of Alaska, right?
Right, only parts, yes. So there were some boys that were either out there fishing or bird watching at 6 a.m. when they see from a distance a pile of fabric on the ground and a blonde man either walking or running away from it. It's been reported all the ways. They think nothing of it. It's just a guy walking out of his campsite, and they continue on with what they're doing. At 11 a.m., there are more people at the lake. People's coming in to swim, fish, do all the lake shit. When a carpenter named Esko happened upon the same scene, the pile of fabric on the ground, and he was either alone, he was either fishing with his young son or multiple sons, there's so many variations, but either way, he sees this pile of fabric, and as he gets closer to see what it is, he sees that it is the canvas tent, but he also sees that there are 2 bodies lying on top of that tent. So he takes off, he finds a phone, and he calls the police. It takes the cops over an hour to get out there, and they realize that there were 2 bodies inside the tent as well. Now, the 2 bodies in the tent are Seppo and Anja. The 2 bodies on top of the tent are Niels and Mela. Now, this is shocking, but even more shocking is when they realize that Niels is still alive. He is unrecognizable. He had been beaten so badly, but he is breathing, and he is the only one breathing.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a rough scene. They get him shipped off to the hospital. They see that all 3 of the bodies that are still there have been beaten and stabbed. Now, here's another variation, because some reports say that only Mela was stabbed, and the other 2 had been beaten with a blunt object. But once they move the bodies, they see that the tent itself was basically shredded, and it's very bloody. So you can see, if you're looking at the case pic, the bottom right picture is the police actually holding up this tent.
So is it a bear?
No. They were beaten with a blunt object. Bears don't usually have weapons. They're their own weapon, right?
They got their fucking claws.
They do have their claws.
And they could
Yeah.
Hands or hammers.
that would be a blunt object, yeah. But the working theory is that these 4 teenagers were attacked from outside of the tent, right? Because obviously to do that much damage to the tent, you would have to go through the tent, right?
Yeah.
To shred it up like that. Now, what the question is how did Niels and Mela get on top of the tent if everybody was attacked inside of it? And based on their injuries, it looked like Mela took much more damage than the other 3 people did. Now, once they're able to look at the bodies, like medically look at the bodies, they report that they were stabbed and beaten with an object like a rock or a pipe. So now, I think your bear theory is getting shoved out the door.
Bigfoot.
But Mela was the only one who had been stabbed 15 times. That's why they were saying she had more injuries than the others. And some of her injuries were inflicted after she was already dead. So some of the reports say that they were actually beaten to death, and then the killer stabbed Mela 15 times. So she was obviously a target. She was also naked from the waist down as well. Some reports it was from the waist up, but most reports waist down. See what I mean? Now, the investigation on this one was one of the worst that we've seen. They didn't close off the crime scene, so people were just trampling all over everything. But they did find out that things like wallets, cash, clothes, Neil's shoes, his leather jacket, and both sets of keys to the motorcycles were missing. A lot of reports say that in this case that it's weird that the killer didn't take the motorcycles but took the keys. And it is. If they thought everyone was dead, then you wouldn't have to worry about taking the keys to keep them from going for help, right? So why take the keys?
I mean, and if it was one person who killed them, it would be kind of hard to leave on 2 motorcycles.
That's true. That's true. What is the saying? Like, you can't ride 2 saddles with 1 ass or something like that. That's what I think of. But also, people would notice if you started a motorcycle in the early hours of the morning in a quiet campground, right? Like, you've got the snack shack right there, and the people who own it live there. So they're permanently there. They would hear you. Plus, like I said, or like you said, are you just going to like hold on to one as you drive the other and hope it doesn't wobble as you go down the road and knock you anyways? Then you're stuck with 2 motorcycles and you got to either sell them or do whatever you're going to do with them. And people's going to notice. How do we get 2 motorcycles?
But I mean, this is the 60s.
It is.
They don't have the technology yet to have the VIN numbers and all that stuff.
No.
Or, run the VIN numbers and everything like that. Back then. Not really. Back then it was a lot easier to get rid of stuff.
It was a lot easier to get rid of stuff. Yes, I agree. But, all of a sudden Ned down the street has 2 motorcycles for sale, and then you hear this news report that these kids had 2 motorcycles stolen after they were killed. Somebody's going to call it in.
Think.
I would think. The keys, I imagine, were probably chucked in the lake as an insurance policy. You know what I mean? Like, not going to be needing those. Just because they're gone doesn't mean the killer took them. That's all I'm saying, if it makes any sense. The police needed to cover a lot of ground to look for evidence, so they called in the military to help canvass. So now there's even more people trampling through the crime scene. But it did kind of help. They found Niels's shoes about 500 yards away, partially buried under a pile of leaves, and they were speckled in blood. So belief is that the shoes were worn by the killer during the attack, and then they were left far away from the crime scene as he or she was leaving. Now, once the story broke, the boys who were bird watching at 6 a.m. told the police about the blonde man that they saw leaving the campsite that morning, and they released a couple of sketches. Also, I'll get into that later. Now, some reports are that Niels was eventually hypnotized as well, and some of these sketches came from him. And speaking of Niels, he had to spend 3 weeks in the hospital. He had broken bones in his face, like his jaw was broken. Some reports say that brain fluid was leaking out of his nose, and some reports say that he had been stabbed in the forehead. But the picture that was shown of him swollen and bruised, he's got a cast on his chin. He's obviously getting medical attention, so he looks like he's in a hospital or something. It doesn't show any cuts or stab wounds to his forehead. So,
well, this story's probably been told so many times that things would get get added
right
over the years,
right, and change from one story to the next. Yeah, and this was so long ago, and like you said, they just pick up things here and there. Now, Niels unfortunately had zero memory of the whole day at first. All he knew was that he was with his friends. Mm-hmm. And they know that because as soon as he woke up, he asked if they were okay. So they know he knew he was with his friends. But over the years, pieces of the day would start coming back to him. And so at first, all he could remember was seeing a shadowy figure before he was attacked. And they say that he was actually attacked first. Right?
So then how did he end up on top of the tent?
Make that make sense. If he was attacked first, how'd he get out of the tent and then end up on top of the tent?
Tiny as Bigfoot.
Well, while you contemplate the existence of Bigfoot, let's go ahead and take a minute to hear from today's sponsor.
Yep. Hang in there. If you're in a heated argument with your dryer, don't worry. You'll both cool down eventually, or maybe you just need a washer and dryer. Don't get agitated. Take a load off.
Get your laundry set from My Laundry Solutions and let them iron out your problems. If you live in an apartment, Get your set from them. They service them, and they have locations in Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. The most recent area is Lubbock, Texas, around the Tech Terrace area, with more locations coming soon.
So give them a call today, 800-535-4411.
Or go online to mylaundrysolutions.com.
And let them wash your troubles away. Let them wash your troubles away.
Yeah.
Great company, great people. Go check them out.
Yeah.
They'll do you right.
They will. And if they don't, tell us. I'm just kidding. We'll tune them up. I'm just kidding. Some reports say that Niels said that the shadowy figure of a man had glowing red eyes. And some say that he had just been wearing black and red clothes. So, but of course, what you tell around the campfire and what you tell your kids to keep them safe is that this was some shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. So you see that a lot. Do what you will with that one. I think I forgot to mention too that the tent strings had, they had tied it off to trees, remember?
Yeah.
Those strings had actually been cut so that the canvas would have fallen onto the teens before the attack. And they believe that it happened somewhere between 4 and 6 a.m. because 6 is when the birdwatch fishing boys saw the blonde man leaving the area. And I'm not sure where they got the 4 a.m. part, but it is reported that one of the girls had been jotting down things in like a diary of sorts, saying how the day was going, things like camping at the lake. She also said Seppo and Niels were drunk. And one of the entries said, up and awake at 2 a.m., Seppo is fishing. So I'm pretty sure that they got the 4 a.m. from whatever she put in her journal at that time. And that's pretty much all they got from the crime scene and the sole survivor at the time. So let's talk about the suspects. You've got Kiosk Carl, and that's what I've nicknamed him. Carl Gilstrom. He's the one who ran the snack shack along with his wife. And remember, they lived right next to it. Now, it's a whole different thing when you run your own business, but still hate your job. Like, you know what I mean? If you didn't like it, like, get a different job, start a different business, But anyways, he just really hated it. And I think what he didn't like the most was the people. I feel like you, not Carl. I feel it. Some of the locals said that he was always bitching about campers. Like he would, and I shit you not, he would cut their tent lines.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. He would throw rocks at people. He had an apple tree on his property, and he would put razor blades in the apples so that if anyone tried to steal one and took a bite, it would bite back.
That's kind of a dick move.
That's a dick move because kids are going to be the ones probably getting them apples.
Yeah.
And he chose this life. Carl, you chose this life.
Mm-hmm.
Sell the kiosk. Anyways, he'd rather disfigure people who want to eat apples. He could put up a fence. Like, there's so many options. Needless to say, his name was one of the first to come up when the cops started interviewing people. It didn't help.
It was old Kiosk Carl.
Old Kiosk Carl over there. And it didn't help that allegedly Carl was seen the same week of the murders filling a well in his yard with concrete, like mixed up wet concrete. Not like he was just throwing blocks in there. He was literally trying to close it off. So people speculated that he was maybe trying to, bury a knife or a rock or a pipe, under feet and feet and feet of concrete. The police talked to his wife, who said, oh, no, it wasn't Carl. He was in bed with me, sleeping the whole night. And the cops were like, cool, thanks for your time, and crossed him off the list.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. All good.
That alibi is rock solid.
Yeah. Move along.
Nothing to see here. Now, years later, in 1969, Carl's neighbor had a story to tell. He's the only one who has told the story because it was a conversation between he and Carl, just the two of them, where Carl allegedly confessed to being the killer. So the neighbor tells him, if you're the one who killed those kids, you should just go throw yourself in the lake. The next day, Carl's body was found in the lake. Yeah.
Okay.
Some report that he just walked into the lake and drowned himself. Yeah, right. And then after that happened, eventually, his wife would recant her alibi that she gave him, now saying that he was not home that night. but he threatened her that she better say he was. And that's why she lied. There you go. And some people said that they had actually seen him coming back from that campsite, but didn't say anything to the cops because they were afraid of him, of his rocks and his razor blade apples. Another suspect they looked into was Hans Osman.
My bad.
It's spelled Assman, and a lot of people will refer to him as Assman, but it's actually pronounced Osman. Now, Hans went to the hospital in Helsinki, which is about 13 miles away from the lake that day. He was complaining of stomach pains, but the doctors say that he was drunk and aggressive. Some reports said that he was tired of waiting to be seen, so he would pretend to pass out, and then he would get pissed off when nobody noticed that he had passed out in the waiting room. But then there's another report that say that the doctors actually, like one of them saw him pretend passed out and walked over and tickled him, and he giggled. And so then they were like, get the hell out, Carl. Or not Carl, get the hell out, ass man. And that apparently really pissed him off. Either way, they had to call the police on him. And he had dirt and mud all over him and caked under his fingernails and all over his hands. And his clothes had something that looked like blood on them.
Oh, the ass man.
Oh, ass man. I kept thinking like the ass man cometh when I was researching this, like the Iceman. Sorry, that's terrible. So they checked his alibi, which was his girlfriend, his sister, and brother-in-law. And they all said that he was with them that night, which they were about 15 miles away from the crime scene. Now, this was his mistress. So he also had a wife. But the mistress was like, oh no, he was totally with us. Now, some say that he resembles some of the police sketches, but they're all different. If you'll look at the bottom left of the case pick, those are the different sketches. And they all look different to me. But you got to think Ass Man does have slicked back hair. It's also the same color, but his jawline is definitely not as pronounced as those are. So some do kind of resemble him, most do not. He had a history, too, of violence and had some questionable ties, like he used to be a Nazi sympathizer or was an actual Nazi. There's multiple stories on that. He moved to Sweden, though, and he would die in the 1990s, so he's no longer able to be looked at. He was looked at for several other cases, though, and allegedly he did a deathbed confession for one of those cases, but he never said anything about this one. He said he didn't do this one. The police say that they interviewed some 4,000 people in this case. And another person that they came across was Pente Soyanen. Yeah, okay. He was a violent dude. He allegedly confessed to being a killer to another inmate, but they rolled out pretty quickly because rolled him out pretty quickly because he was only 14 at the time of the murders. So there's also a picture.
Sorry.
There's also a picture that was taken at one of the funerals. We don't have that picture up there, but there was a man in the crowd that looks exactly like that bottom right sketch. Like exactly like that. It's wild. The wide jaw guy. But they never found out who that was. And they do say, that sometimes killers will go back to crime scenes or go to things like this just to see, other people's reactions and kind of boast about it. It's really weird, but they do. They return and they're thinking that might be what this was, but they never found out who that guy was. So the case just went cold at that point.
Kind of shocked with an investigation like that.
Right? They did such a good job. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they couldn't get any leads.
Yeah. Move along.
Now let's fast forward to 2004. Remember, this happened in the 60s. So we're in 2004, and the police just up and arrest a 62-year-old Niels.
Really?
Yes. He is now a bus driver, a husband, a father. The person who got this cold case had sent off that evidence because, advancements in forensic technology. They find out that Niels' blood was inside the tent. So now they say that it's possible that he actually got into a fight in the tent but with Seppo. Right? What?
Okay.
There was a woman staying at a nearby campsite who said that she heard two male voices arguing in the night. So they're like, oh, that's got to be Niels and Seppo, the only two men who were out there. The argument possibly turned physical because they were drunk. And maybe Seppo is the one who did the damage to Niels in that fight, breaking his jaw, causing the head trauma, things like that. Broken facial bones, bruises everywhere. And then Niels left the tent, or was exiled from the tent, some say, and then attacked it from the outside because he was pissed. Right? Now I'm thinking maybe in order for that to happen, Mela would have probably followed him out of the tent. And that's why the two of them were outside. And then after the attack, Seppo and Anja are killed, and then he turned on Mela. And that's why she was, damaged more severely and was outside, like I said. Now that's pure speculation, but when they tested his shoes, remember it was his shoes that were found 500 yards away.
Yeah.
When they tested those shoes, they found that all three of the teens had dried blood on those shoes. Do you know whose blood was not on the shoes?
His?
Niels. He was the only one. There was also no blood inside the shoes. So that's why they were saying that the killer had to be wearing them whenever the damage was done. Yes. So they believed that Niels thought about taking off after he killed all them, but then realized that he would be looked at as a suspect. And if he wasn't there, it would make it look even worse. So he took the shoes off and tried to hurry up and bury them under the leaves, and then went back to the crime scene and laid down, waiting to be found. Yeah. There was also allegedly a bloody trail to the shoes, right? So they could follow a blood trail to where the shoes were found, but there was nothing else, like no bloody trail leaving where the shoes were found.
So they could see it, you could see how they got there.
Right. So the way they're putting this all together, you could say, okay, that could have happened. It could have. And it makes a little more sense than the killer just randomly putting on shoes, killing 4 people or thinking he killed 4 people, and then walking 500 yards and burying it and walking away.
Yeah.
Like, why would he do that? Also, prosecutors allege that Niels had been ID'd by one of those bird-watching fisher boys, that he had made some type of incriminating remark at one point over the years, and that he had later boasted to a woman that he was the actual killer. So they've got all these people coming forward saying, he said he did it. And then the kids are like, yeah, that's the guy we saw walking away from the campsite. Ugh. But they also offered up an alternative that maybe Seppo didn't do all that damage to his head, that he could have, just maybe broke his jaw or maybe broke some of the bones in his face. And then to make it worse, that he could have ran himself into a tree or something to make more damage, to make it more believable. You know what I mean? Like, you've bludgeoned all these other people. You need more damage. Or otherwise it doesn't look right. Excuse me. Now, he also had injuries to his knuckles and forearms. So they're saying that looks like he was actually in a fight. So everything is pointing towards what they're saying. His defense, though, would say that that was all bullshit. That if he had been so injured in a fight, that he would have been too messed up to be able to kill all of them, hide his shoes a quarter of a mile away, and track back to lay down and look like a victim. Plus, he was wearing socks that were clean. So they're saying he couldn't have walked all that way in the woods without getting them dirty. And those injuries to his knuckles and arms were not an indication of a fight, but of defensive wounds from when he was attacked first, remember? So on October 7th of 2005, that would be 45 years after the murders, Niels was actually acquitted. So they found him not guilty. The court said that the evidence was inconclusive. They failed to show motive, and the timing didn't allow for everything that they said happened. So
I bet he sued him.
Well, I don't think he had to, because the state of Finland paid him 44,900
euro.
Yes, which is $45,000 in American money for mental suffering, for putting him through all this so many years later. And I was stuck on that the prosecution had said that the injuries were not bad enough to cause amnesia, But the defense is like brain fluid was literally leaking out of his nose. That can cause, memory loss. That's a lot of damage. Get your head out of your ass. Another thing that didn't come out in court was that there was a 5th DNA sample found at the campsite. I figured that this wasn't too big of a deal. This is a public campsite, right? You're going to have multiple DNAs on things. But it was reportedly found on a folded up pillowcase that had been tied with string on both ends. So it's not like they had found it on an old beer bottle or something. That would have been odd. But this was a literal pillowcase that somebody had used string to tie both ends closed on. It was really weird. And they've never identified whose DNA that was. So I doubt they even know. Now, they do know that it wasn't any of the teens, though. Sorry, it took me a minute to form that thought. But they do know it wasn't any of them. So it's definitely from an outside source, a 5th person. So it's still an unsolved case. Loads of people do believe that Niels did it. And loads of people believe that Kiosk Carl did it. Some say it was the ass man and his mistress girlfriend lied for him. And we may never know. But Hans's DNA was also tested against that 5th DNA at the scene, and it was not his either. So.
Maybe it was the man at the funeral.
Maybe. Like I said, they never found out who that was. So who knows? Now, this case did inspire a movie, books. Hell, there's a Finnish rock band named Children of Bodom. Bodom. One of these days I'll say it right. So there's a rock band called Children of Bodom. And they got with Fat Lizard Brewing Company and made a beer called Lake Bodom Pre-Prohibition Lager. And it's actually brewed using water from the lake.
What?
Yes. Yep. They brewed it in 2019. And they used water from the lake. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
I was like, huh?
I don't know about that. We're going to get comments like, oh, it's the best ever.
It might be. I've never heard of it because I don't think they sell it here, but
yeah, no.
I don't know if I could try it now that I know where it came from. Do you know what happens in lakes? Like, ooh. And that's what this case is. The family's got no resolution. And if Niels is innocent, he just got drugged through the mud 45 years later. So it's really crazy. You got any final thoughts on this one? Who do you think did it?
Huh?
You looking at Carl?
No, it sounded pretty good on Niels.
A lot of people think it was.
Old crazy Carl, Kiosk Carl, he sounded like he was pretty good for it too.
You can't narrow it down on some of these. All right.
But no.
Whoever you think did it, let us know. Let us know. I want to know who you think did it. I'm talking to the people.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you let us know. Instead of correcting us all the time, why don't you just let us know?
Give me your facts.
What do you guys think?
Yeah. What article?
Who do you think done it?
Yeah. You tell me. Now, if you like our content, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you get a notification whenever a new episode drops or when we go live sometimes. If you have any case suggestions, you can send them to dnda.truecrime@gmail.com.
Yep. And as always, don't forget to tell your friends because why not share it along with your friends?
They deserve it.
Yeah, they deserve to hear us too. So,
hear us ramble.
Hear us ramble and go about. But as always, guys, thank you for watching. Thanks for the subscriptions. Until next time, we'll see you.
Bye.